Sam. Okay. Guess I don't need to. Ta-da! Yay!
Hi, my name is Dr. Deb Samper, and I'm a chiropractor, and I also do nutrition coaching for people. I'm in this office, as you know, so I just wanted to welcome you. I think all of you know where you are, and you've been here before, so I don't have to tell you where the restrooms are or anything. There are snacks in the back, and the snacks are made. There's no white sugar in them and no flour, so they are sweetened with either fruit, like bananas, or honey, or maple syrup. So feel free to have some snacks in the back. So that's my introduction. We'll just tell you quickly who we are, and then we'll start right in.
Okay, my name's Christine Moreta-Servin. I'm an estate planning attorney. I'll be talking to you guys about estate planning basics today, but normally I talk about guardianship and kids protection planning, so if you have any questions, you can ask me about that later. But today we're just going to be talking, or I'm just going to be talking about general estate planning. So if you have any questions about that, we're saving all the questions until the end, correct?
Well, after we
each
talk for about
presentation.
20 minutes or so,
Okay.
then we'll have like 10 minutes of questions.
Sure, okay. And I am a Bay Area girl. I'm actually born in the Philippines, but I was raised in San Leandro and then Milpitas, and then I traveled a little bit, went to school in LA and San Francisco. But I came back to the South Bay, which is my home, and I have a husband and 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old. And that's about it. And this is Maria. She'll introduce herself.
Hello.
Hi, Maria.
So I'm Maria Horwick. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I have a private practice in San Jose on the Alameda. I see adults and I see adolescents, so about 13 and up, not little kids. Sorry, King, not yet.
They picked you up.
I'm originally from San Diego, but I've been up here since 1990, and I got interested in psychology because my father died suddenly when I was 3 years old of a heart attack, and my mother did not handle this well. And I got to see growing up how she handled that played out in our family dynamics. And so I became fascinated with why people do what they do, because there's almost always a reason. So that's how I became interested in psychology. And I'm going to tell you guys about how to change a bad habit that you want to change.
Great. Oh, and I want to introduce my husband, Jim. He's in the back with King right now.
Hey.
And
He's
so,
going to give you a little man power.
Okay. Thank you everyone for inviting me today to speak. So, next slide please, Christine. Thank you. So, I like this quote by Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. There's also a great quote by F. Alexander. People do not decide their futures. They decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. So habits are obviously pretty important, right? And how often do we keep our promise to tone up for the summer or a New Year's resolution, right? Plenty of us make New Year's resolutions. We usually don't keep them. Why? Well, it's too hard. It's too overwhelming. I've picked 20 things that I want to change, and I'm just overwhelmed by all the change. I don't have any support. I want to quit smoking, and my partner continues to smoke, and I smell it, and it makes me want it. So we know that habits are hard to change, but there's actually a way to do it. There's psychology behind both how habits are formed and how you can form new ones. And that's what I'm going to tell you about today. Next slide, please. Thank you, Christine. So there's a process that you go through in order to form a habit. Every habit follows this basic 3-step structure, which is reminder, routine, reward. Believe it or not, every single thing we do because there's some reward for us. Now that might not seem very intuitive. You might think, okay, well, I go to my aunt's house every Saturday night because I feel like I have to, and she drinks and is like verbally abusive and mean to me. So why do I keep going there every Saturday? What do you mean there's a reward in it for me, Maria? There's some reward that makes you go there every Saturday. It might be that it gives you peace of mind. It might be that, you promised your mother that you would visit her sister every Saturday night. It might be that for a few hours it actually makes you feel really good about yourself and your life because your aunt is really not in a good situation. But there's some reward there. So if you look at this reminder, routine, reward, I'll give you an example. Let's say that the phone rings. Okay? The reminder is the trigger that initiates the behavior. So in this case, the trigger would be the phone ringing. The routine is that you answer the phone, right? We usually answer. The reward
or benefit you gain from doing the behavior is you find out who's on the other end of the phone, which I suppose could be a negative too, if it's not. So, reminder, routine, reward. If the reward is positive, then you'll want to repeat it again and again and again. We learn quickly to avoid pain and discomfort, and we learn quickly to move towards things that make us feel good. So again, every habit follows this 3-step structure. So, next please. Now that you know how habits get formed, what can you do to eliminate bad habits and form some good ones? There are some things you can do actually. Next slide please. There's about, oh, you have a different present. Okay. There's 8 steps, and the first one is to start small.
I need to go back one.
Oh.
Sorry,
Oh, good. There are 8 steps, and I'm going to go through them one at a time. So on the next slide, which is start small, choose just one habit to start with, and then choose a small goal. So for example, let's say that you want to start exercising, and you've been a couch potato and really have not done, and we actually know someone in this situation. She went from being a couch potato to deciding she wanted to run a marathon. She called and signed up to do the marathon, and then called back 10 minutes later and said, "How far is this?"
Yeah.
I've done a half marathon and that was enough.
She was like, "What?" So she actually, it was team and training. She did this long process, but she was going to go from being a couch potato to doing the marathon, right? Without even realizing what she was getting into. So if you give yourself an
Well, yeah,
unrealistic
she knew what she was
goal-
getting into, she would have done it.
Actually, she's done like 11 marathons. She's
Yay!
Yeah, she's very into it.
It can work.
It can. Giving yourself an unrealistic goal at the beginning can hurt you. So if your goal is to start exercising, I wouldn't just sign up for a marathon, right? That's a really, really big goal. I would maybe start exercising 10 minutes a day, then 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. I've seen clients who were very, very obese, who literally this is how they started. They started, 10 minutes was all they could walk comfortably, and that's what they started with. And they've come a really long way. So change is hard work. And if you try to change too many things at once, you're setting yourself up for failure. So if you want to quit smoking and you want to stop eating sugar, and you want to make sure you exercise for 30 minutes every morning, trying to do all 3 of those all at the same time is going to be kind of difficult for you, right? Next, please. The next step is plan.
Oops.
Write down a plan. Things, we believe it or not, we tend to stick to things more when we've written them down. So writing it down can really help you. Write down a plan that includes your motivation for change, potential obstacles and how you might overcome them, triggers, getting a support buddy, etc. So what is a trigger? A trigger is a type of cue. So for example, maybe I used to smoke and I always had a cigarette with my morning coffee. Even now that I've tried, I'm not smoking anymore, the smell of coffee could very well be a trigger for me. And I actually know someone who, she smoked all her life. For the last 10 years, she stopped smoking. And she told me, you know what, to this day, I still crave a cigarette whenever I smell one, whenever I read the newspaper, and whenever I have coffee. Because those were the activities that she would smoke while she did. So those things were very much linked in her mind. So pay attention to what your triggers are. The next step, write down a positive habit you're going to do to replace every single trigger you've listed. So as a therapist, a lot of times my clients come to me with what we call a maladaptive coping mechanism. So for example, maybe the way I deal with stress is I smoke marijuana. Well, that's not a very healthy coping mechanism. So I never take away a coping mechanism from a client without giving them something to replace it. Because that's part of what's wrong with a lot of these rehabs, right? They lock you up, you have no access to drugs, and then they turn you loose back to your old neighborhood, your old friends, old people, old habits, and they don't teach you, okay, the next time you feel really anxious, instead of doing drugs, what are you going to do? They don't give you that replacement behavior. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do, is come up with a replacement behavior. Last is motivation, and the motivation for change is different for all of us, right? So, for example, maybe you want to quit smoking. I don't know why I keep going to smoking, but maybe you want to quit smoking because you fear it will prematurely age you and give you wrinkles. So, in this example, your motivation for change is basically vanity, right? Most of us don't make a serious, long-term, lasting change based on vanity. Consider this example instead. I want to quit smoking because I have 2 small children and I want to make sure that I'm around for them for a long time. I'm a heck of a lot more likely to stick to my new habit in the second scenario, because that's more important to me than vanity. So it's good to think about what your motivation is for change. So here, it's not vanity, it's health and being around for my kids. So, identify the underlying cause as the next step. All habits have a function. Just like I said, believe it or not, there's some reward there. And figuring out what it is can help you a lot. All habits have a function. What does this activity do for you? So, for example, let's say that you like to do online gaming. You get on your computer and you play games. What does that activity do for you? Is it a distraction? Does it distract you from your worries and stresses of the day? Is it a way that you get to isolate yourself from family that you don't want to have to talk to? Do you actually win money and you have a plan of what you're going to do with this money? It does something for you. So it's good to think about, what does this activity do for me? What is the reward? I'm giving you this example of morning exercise versus mindless eating. I think we could agree that probably morning exercise is a good habit, a positive habit, and then the mindless eating is not so much. That's more of a negative. So you want to think about, again, what is the underlying cause? Why am I doing this behavior? Next is deal with it. Once you identify the underlying cause, sorry, it's time to deal with it. Once you identify the real issue, you're halfway there. So, for example, let's say that you have a habit of snacking on junk food late in the afternoon. And then let's say you think about why you're doing this, and you conclude, you know what, it's because I'm hungry. I'm really actually truly hungry at 3:30 in the afternoon. Okay, good. This gives you information. Information you can use. Your habit of snacking is telling you that you need to take time each day to eat a good lunch, or else you're going to do the snacking behavior, right? So when you think about the underlying cause, it's also going to think about what information can you get from the cause. Because sometimes, like in this example, it's not necessarily a bad habit to snack in the afternoon. It's indicative of the fact that I'm not eating well earlier in the day. And once I fix that, probably my snacking habit's going to go away. Next, please. Write it down. Do you have write it down?
Yeah, no. I'm missing two there.
Should we write it down and then pair up and then be patient?
Yeah, it's not there.
Okay. Sorry about that. Write it down. Research shows that writing out a goal and keeping it handy to look at every day can help you stay on track. A lot of people recommend that you write your goal down and you look at it in the morning, right when you get up, at night, right before you go to bed, and that you look at it before you eat every meal. Even if the habit has nothing to do with food and what you're trying to change. It's positive affirmations, and it's a way of retraining your brain. Consider writing down your goal, reading it at these different times. I know people who've put a picture on their fridge of what they want to look like to try to motivate them to eat differently. Or people that have put a picture of their children near where they usually smoke when they're trying to quit smoking, because that helps motivate them. The next is to pair up. Consider embarking on this changing a habit with a pal. Being accountable helps you stay on track. So for example, why is Weight Watchers often successful? There's an accountability component to Weight Watchers. It's a group where they're there to give you support and help you lose weight, but at the beginning of every meeting you are weighed in. Yes, weighed in. So there is accountability built into that, and believe it or not, it works. So consider pairing up with someone. In college I had to take a class that I knew was not going to be fun. It was a general ed, so we all had to take it. So I convinced my friend to take it with me because I thought if we take it together, I'm going to be mad at her if I drag my butt over there and she doesn't show up, and she's going to be mad if she goes and I don't show up. So we paired up to do this thing that we didn't totally want to do, and because we knew the other one was waiting for us, we showed up and we did the class. So pairing up is very powerful, and also having some sort of accountability. I've also had some people I actually had a client who had a goal for weight loss, and he decided that for every week that he didn't make his goal, he was going to make a donation to an entity that he hated. So he made, for example, a monetary donation to the neo-Nazi party, and yes, like twice. That's all it took, and he didn't want to do that so badly that it made him stick to his habit. I have clients who've made kind of a bet within their group of people of, whoever goes the longest without smoking wins the pot of money. Whatever it is that can motivate you, go for it. And again, it's different for different people. Right? So next, be patient. Researchers used to claim that it took about 30 days to break a habit. We actually know that's closer to 3 months, which is a long time, 90 days. Changing a habit is really, really hard. And if you want proof, go home today, go into your kitchen, go to the drawer where you keep your silverware, and move your silverware. Just temporarily. Put it in a different drawer in your kitchen. And then watch over the next week how many times you walk to the old drawer, old drawer, old drawer. That's a habit. They get ingrained. I mean, have you worked at a place for 10 years, your job changes, and the next thing you know, you're on autopilot driving to the old job, right? Habit, habit, habit. So changing a habit, again, is hard. You might want to try the silverware. I actually did do the silverware thing, and I ended up, now my silverware is permanently in a different drawer. I decided I like the new location better. But I did. It took me about 4 days, I think, to stop going for the old location.
That's all?
Yeah,
Just
that's not
4
too
days?
bad.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
4
it took me
days.
like 6 weeks.
Did you do the silverware thing?
Yeah.
Did you move it back?
Nope.
Okay, so you might all be relocating your silverware.
No, I still go for the shift on the column, and I haven't had a shift on the column. I don't know if I ever did, but anyway, a long time, you know, and it's probably 50 years. No,
Wow.
I didn't start driving when I was 16. Yes, I did. 16.
It's amazing how patterns get ingrained. Allow for mistakes and learn from them. Mistakes can help us because they can give us information. A slip-up provides you with information if you will listen. It can tell you what triggers or stressors divert you from your new good habit and back to the old one that you're trying to break. And you can use this information to improve your chances for success. So, for example, let's say I find I do really well on my dairy-free diet. I'm trying to avoid dairy. I do really well on that except for Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I'm just like, I've fallen off the wagon. Okay, well, what happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Okay, well, I pick my daughter up from soccer and I take the team to go get ice cream. Okay, well, how good do you think your willpower is, Maria? I don't know. I don't think it's so good. I think if I see it, I'm going to want to have it. Okay, then maybe you shouldn't go to the ice cream place on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What else could you do? I could ask a different parent to take the kids to the ice cream, or I could take the kids somewhere other than an ice cream place as a reward, right? But again, looking at that slip-up of why am I eating this on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it helps me figure out what I'm doing that's getting in the way of changing my habit and what I can do to fix that. So again, it's identifying triggers and replacement habits for those behaviors. The next is self-talk. Freud called it the ego. We all have a voice kind of in our heads that is often full of the word should. You should do this, you shouldn't do that, why did you do this, why did you do that, you're never going to have this, blah, 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 blah. For a lot of us, that voice sounds like our mother. Mine does, and that's my mom's voice. And it's very powerful. It can really help you, and it can also really harm you. So remember, you will get frustrated and you will have negative thoughts. You will probably think at some point, this is too hard. I can't do this. Who am I kidding? I never stick to anything. Well, that's an old soundtrack that you need to replace with a new soundtrack. You need to correct your self-talk. You need to replace negative statements with positive ones, like, I can do it, or this will be hard, but worth it. We were actually shown a film when I was in graduate school. It was basically around how to interview, how to be careful doing a forensic interview with a child, because you can lead them to say things that aren't true. So it's a video that is a 6-year-old boy working with a therapist, and his parents have signed permission for him to be filmed. They know he's being filmed. And every session, she starts off by saying, tell me about the fire. There was no fire. And the boy will say, no, what fire? No fire. She does that every time for 6 weeks. On the 6th session, she says to him, tell me about the fire. He tells her an elaborate story about the fire in his house, how the paramedics had to come and get his dad, how they all had to go to the hospital. And so we were shown this in the context of, if you suggest something, we're highly suggestible. And if you suggest something enough, someone might believe it. Now, yes, this person was only 6 years old, but you can see how over time the power of always telling yourself, I never follow through on everything. I always give up. I'm a quitter. I quit. I quit. That's self-fulfilling prophecy, and you're going to end up quitting. So, the next slide, please. Seek help if you need it. If you're having trouble identifying triggers or underlying causes, consider seeing a therapist. A lot of people ask me, well, what will a therapist do for me? Will they give me advice? No. A good therapist will never tell you what to do. Now, a coach is different, like some kind of life coach. They tend to be very directive and instructive. But basically, you guys have heard that expression, what is it? Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, and he'll eat for life. If I just tell you what to do, first of all, that's based on me, my values, my life, the things that I want. I'm then kind of putting that on you. My job as a therapist is to help you figure out what you want to do. So if you meet with a therapist and they right off say, okay, here's what you need to do. Fire this and leave this man and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Maybe I would consider going to another therapist because we're really not supposed to tell you what to do. We're supposed to ask you questions, point out patterns, things that we see. You know, do you realize that you are constantly attracted to people that are emotionally unavailable for you? I wonder how that might have started. So the therapist should be asking you questions and helping you figure it out. They shouldn't just tell you what to do. Next slide. That's it. So thank you very much for your time. Now at the end, I'm going to take some questions. But this is my information. You could always email me just if you have a question or you're like, what were those 8 steps again? I can email you the presentation if you like. There's also cards in the back that have my information on them. And there's also a flyer if it's applicable for any of you. I'm actually speaking at something in June in Sunnyvale for older adults that are thinking of going into a senior living community. I've been asked to speak about kind of the emotional and psychological aspect of that for the person that might move. So if you or your parent are in that situation, you can consider attending, and it's the pink flyer that's in the back. So thank you very much, and I'd love to take your questions if you have any.
What did you say again about therapist as a coach as opposed to a coach?
Well, people that call themselves a life coach, there's actually anyone can do that. There's no regulatory body, no licensing agency, no schooling required. So halfway through graduate school, I thought to myself, I could have just called myself a life coach and saved myself a lot of work. To become a licensed therapist, you need to get a master's degree, which is 90 units, it's almost a doctorate. Then you have to work off 3,000 hours under someone else's license. Then you have to study for and pass 2 state licensing exams. And we are regulated. I can get in trouble for all kinds of things. There's ethical considerations and legal considerations. Life coach, they don't have any of those. So I think it might be a little sketchy.
Life coach is more like a buddy then?
Well, I mean, you pay them. you pay them for advice. I've also seen some people bill themselves as dating coaches. Yes, and again, that's a little bit more appropriate to be more directive. But again, if I just tell you what to do, I don't even have your buy-in because I've seen you twice, and how well do I really know you and know what you want for your life and know your background and that sort of thing. So, yes, Christine.
If you know somebody who would benefit from speaking with a therapist, what's the best way to get them to meet with you without basically offending them?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I give free 20-minute or so consultations. A lot of therapists do, some don't. But I encourage people to shop. You wouldn't buy the first car that you test drove. And if you don't feel a good click with the person within a session or two, move on. Because you need that rapport and you need that good click. So for your question, I think probably what I would do is say, I know someone who works with people on helping them change, whatever it is. Like instead of labeling it as a therapist, I know someone that works with people on getting strategies to deal with anxiety or with strategies around depression. And I think she'd be willing to talk to you for free, just for like 20 minutes. You make it sound very casual, and then connect them with me. And they can email me, they can call me, we can do it over the phone. And it's funny, I was just watching the show the other day that had a skit from the 80s in it. And one woman was saying to the other woman, this is the card of my analyst. Go see them. And I'm like, oh, that's right. In the 80s, it was in style to see a therapist. So it was fashionable. Now, sometimes people feel there's a stigma or they want to hide it. And so that might be true for your friends. So sometimes I avoid labeling using the word therapist, or I'll say, this is someone that could help you with some strategies for parenting or depression. Yes?
I have a 20-year-old who to me seems depressed, and I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but she really thinks that she's not. She's often in bed, or just doesn't seem very, everything is negative. Well, we talk about it, they're wrong, they're bad, that's horrible. I mean, I've suggested therapy to her, but she gets very defensive. If you believe that, just because you believe it, I'm not going to do it. Is that kind of attitude? I don't know if that's ever in adolescence. Is that?
Oh, and
She's
often
20,
in
let's say adolescent, but
depression has an aspect of hostility to it,
oh,
where they're angry because they know that there's something wrong, but they don't know what. But I mean, you're describing common symptoms of depression would be sleep disturbance, so sleeping a lot, too much or not enough. You said she's sleeping too much.
all she'll do is work. Work is bad.
And sleep? Does she sleep?
Nope, barely. Sometimes.
So she's probably thrown herself into work. Well, does she ever complain to you about, oh, I feel anxious, or I'm having insomnia, I feel like I can't sleep?
She does say she has anxiety. She calls them panic attacks.
Perfect.
I call it anxiety. But that's not the biggest issue, I don't think. Her panic attacks are around too many people. She does get anxiety. I say anxiety, whatever. Again, I'm not a therapist, but I think that if she really sat with somebody and said, this is what's going on, besides me, then maybe more would come out, because who knows, maybe I did something, I don't know.
Well, I think that the way in might be the panic attack. A panic attack is absolutely terrifying. You feel like you're going to die. You feel like your heart is going to explode in your chest.
She looks
I've never
like that.
had one,
She's
but I've
scared.
been told by clients what they're like, and you think you're going to die. It is absolutely terrifying. So if I were you, I would use that as the in. And I would say, these panic attacks are really debilitating, and I can tell that you are really concerned about them. I know someone that can help you with your panic attacks, and I can teach her how to calm herself down when that happens. But as part of, any therapist will do a full assessment, and they'll find out that she also has PTSD and ADHD, depression, all the other things going on.
Okay, well, I've taken her therapist, but she's just very negative about them too. Everything's negative.
Well,
They just want to know my business. They don't care. They just want to know my business. It's like, okay, forget it. Kind of throw my hands up.
I work with teenagers who are notoriously distrustful of adults, right? And I used to have kind of funky colors in my hair, and they liked me better then. They were like, I had one stick report. Now I have to work on it a little bit. But basically, slow and steady wins the race. I show them, I do everything I say I'm going to do. I never do anything I say I'm not going to do. I tell them the truth. I'm never late. I never change anything. I'm consistent.
Let's take one of your cards.
And after a couple of sessions, then the anxiety goes down, because usually they've been let down by every adult in their life. And I'm just one more, I'm part of the system. Someone's making me come here. So they'll be like, yeah, that sucks. It sucks your aunt's making you come here. Well, we have to spend an hour together every week. What could we do with this time? I find my way in.
Yeah.
And before they know it, they'll tell me, I'm only going to stay like 10 minutes. And then an hour later, they're still sitting in my office. So once we get them in and get them comfortable and explain about confidentiality, especially with a teenager, there's a ton of stuff I cannot tell their parents. Like literally, I'm subject to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. And that's usually their consideration. What are you going to tell my mom? What does she get to know? Only really big things. Like if you told me you were going to kill yourself, I'd have to tell her. Or you told me you were going to kill someone else. But, you tell me that you smoked pot at the party last night, I'm not going to tell your mother that, nor can I.
Right.
What about being molested?
That is also reportable, and I also explain at the beginning what is reportable and what is not. And I also tell them, I will also tell you if something is reportable or not. So you could say to me, Maria, if I were to tell you that I'm having sex with someone 10 years older than me, would you have to report that? And I will tell you the truth, that I will not count that as a report. Although I can tell you, my teenagers are so savvy, they know. Like I can tell when they avoid telling me how old the partner is. I know how old the partner is, right?
Over 18, right?
Right, for sure. Well, I'll be around at the end for more questions, but thank you so much.
So can we get copies of the transcript that I can put on the internet?
Oh, sure, gladly.
Maria, would you like to hand out one of your postcards to everybody?
Oh, sure. Great. Would you mind writing the email address? Absolutely.
This is me. This is Christine. We're going to talk to you next.
Is that your little boy?
Yeah.
Oh.
gonna run for his money.
Dribbling.
He's slobbering too. He's
Well,
about
yeah.
7 months old, so he's about as old as he is.
Wow.
We tried to edit out the drool before, but it didn't work.
No,
I like
it
that.
fits, it just makes it more, I don't know.
Does he have teeth?
He's adorable.
Oh, actually, I'm not sure if he had teeth then. Because my daughter is 7 months old, she's just starting to get teeth now. But man, she likes to bite.
I definitely grow more when they're teething.
Yeah. So I'll just introduce myself really quickly. My name's Christine Servin. I'm an estate planning attorney, and I'm just here to talk to you today about protecting your family and friends. And before I do that, I'll tell you more about myself. I grew up in Milpitas, and I currently live there now today with my husband John, our 4-year-old son Jude, and our 7-month-old Mia. And before I ever became a mom or an attorney, I was a shy, chubby little girl who hated public speaking, and lo and behold, here I am. I went to college at USC, and I actually ended up majoring in the speech major. I had no idea that I did that.
Speech major?
There was a major that actually makes you speak, like, as part of what you're doing. I didn't know that. I thought it was just communication. I thought it was like journalism. But I just kept taking the classes. By the time I figured that out, it was too late. I was ready to graduate, and I actually didn't mind it. So, but then I found out that it was really funny that I ended up being a lawyer, just because I hated public speaking so much. But I went to law school mostly because I just wanted to see what it was like, and also because my roommate had just decided to take the LSATs, and I was just really competitive, and I thought, if you're taking the LSATs, I'm going to take the LSATs. And then as soon as I wrote the check for Kaplan, I thought, okay, there's no turning back. But 3 years later, after law school, after enrolling in law school, I earned my law degree. I've been practicing law since 2007, and I've had my own practice since 2010. And I share an office with a bunch of women. We're called the Hen House. It's not an official name, that's just what we call ourselves. And we all practice different things. So if you ever need assistance with family law, or bankruptcy, business formation, and personal injury and criminal law, we're all there. So,
Do you do medical malpractice?
No, I don't, but I know an attorney who does, so I can recommend someone. I'm an estate planning attorney, which means that I help people make really important decisions about what's going to happen to their loved ones and their stuff. Most estate plans I do include a living trust, a will, an advanced healthcare directive, a durable power of attorney, and some kids protection documents too if you have minor kids. My firm is run a little bit differently than most. We like to make sure that your estate plan works for you, so when you become a client, you have unlimited lifetime consultation. So that means you're not going to be scared to call us and get a bill in the mail for like $400 when you thought you were just chatting me up, asking me how my kids were, and blah, blah, blah. Because that has happened to some of my clients where they said that they just called, they asked how the kids were doing, how their day was, and they got a bill for it because they had this one tiny little question. They were billed the whole call. So we encourage communication. We do a free review of your estate plan every 3 years as well to make sure your estate plan works for you. A lot of people don't realize when you do an estate plan that you have to constantly update it when big things happen or when you acquire more assets or when you get rid of assets. Basically we just want to make sure that your estate plan works for you, so we try to make things easy as possible. I'm not a professional speaker. I just enjoy sharing what I know with people who are interested. And so a lot of you might be taking care of kids and worrying about aging parents as well. So in addition to worrying about your own estate, so feel free to ask me questions at the end regarding that, but we'll cover everything in this presentation. Today I'm going to talk about estate planning. It's definitely not something you do for yourself. It's going to be something you do for your loved ones, especially since you're not going to be around to benefit from that planning. Basically, you'll be gone. So today, this is my son, and this is probate. Oh, probate is
A lot of
lawsuit.
pennies in there.
Yeah, probate is also known as a lawsuit you file against yourself with your own money for the benefit of your creditors. Yeah.
I love
Has
that.
anybody ever gone through probate before?
So say that again, that's a lawsuit you file against yourself
With your
with your own money for the benefit of your
creditors. And you you know who wins from that? Lawyers. So not everybody needs to go through probate. Basically, if you don't have an estate plan, the state will have an estate plan for you, and that's what probate is. So probate is a process during which your assets are transferred to your heirs after your death. It typically starts when your executor files a petition with the court asking to be named the executor of your estate. And at the end, your executor is allowed to pay your debts and distribute your assets. So if you didn't have a will, it would go to your next of kin according to this bloodline law. Not everybody needs to go through probate. If you're married and you own property together in joint tenancy or as community property, generally you would just need to file an affidavit with the court or with the county recorder, and you would still be the surviving owner. So no probate would be necessary in that case. If you were going to transfer that piece of property to anybody else not on title, for instance, if it was your kids, because your kids are under 18, or if it was going to go to a friend or somebody who's not in your family, you would definitely want to take steps to avoid probate. If you have very little assets, you might not need probate. If you don't own any real property or your assets are valued at $150,000 or less, you'll probably just need to do another simplified procedure to transfer assets. But why do people want to avoid probate? First of all, probate is really expensive. It can cost about 5% of the total assets, and it's also pretty, it takes a long time. In California, it can take about 12 to 16 months. We'd like it to go faster, but we can't. And it's also really, really costly. So these are the attorney's fees. Just if you have a gross estate value on the left, you can estimate how much it is on the right. And this is just statutory fee, so every attorney is going to charge you that much. And your executor is also entitled to that much too. So
Who is also entitled to that much?
the executor, so your executor, so let's say you pass away and you've nominated someone as your executor, maybe your sister. Your sister might say, okay, I don't want to really take any money, I'm just doing this because she's my sister and we're family. But eventually she might consider getting that money because she's taking off time from work, she's putting in a lot of time and effort into administering your estate, so she would be entitled to that same fee, basically.
So it costs you
So
twice
that's,
that.
yeah, so that's double that
Yeah.
for executors and the attorneys too. Next slide.
Give that money to an attorney.
Yeah. This is the last will of Anna Nicole Smith, and I'm showing you this because I can. Probate is a very public process. In addition to being long and costly, basically everything, all of your assets get put on blast, basically. So when an attorney or someone files a probate petition, they have to state what assets you own, and the court will determine who gets those assets. And that's why we can look at her will, because she had one and it gets published. And next slide. And if you have young beneficiaries, this is something else to consider. Your kids will get everything, or these kids will get everything after they turn 18. So if you're leaving something behind to a young kid and you didn't set up an estate plan with a living trust, that kid's going to get everything at age 18. And that's a public process too. So everyone's going to know that your daughter or son could potentially be getting a lot of money and that this could happen. I just Googled the word parties. I have a friend whose husband received about $50,000 when he was 18, and then he received another $150,000 when he was 21. So as a result, he never really had to support himself, and after that money ran out, he basically became a loaf and just mooched off people who loved him.
Who's loaf? Who's loaf?
Oh, loaf, I mean like couch potato. Yeah. Couch potato, just someone who hangs out.
A bum.
A bum.
A bum.
Those
A
are
bum.
weird. All these words are.
You never worked?
He never worked.
He never worked. He just kind of hoped somebody would feel sorry for him.
Mooched off people.
You hope somebody would die and leave you some money.
The only foolproof way to avoid probate is to have a fully funded living trust. And as I said, it's completely avoidable, but a lot of you are probably wondering what a trust is. If you think about it like a contract, it's kind of like something that you are signing and you're setting up an entity, also like a corporation. So it's kind of confusing when I say it like that, but if you think about a bucket, you'll be holding the bucket, and the bucket is your living trust. You are the settlor or the creator of the trust, and you'll be putting assets into the bucket, you're putting things into the living trust. and you're holding the bucket during your lifetime. Then once you kick the bucket gets passed on to somebody else who's your successor trustee and will manage everything and actually eventually distribute everything out of that bucket. So when you have a revocable trust, it's administered for your need during your lifetime, and then once you pass away, it gets distributed the way you wanted it to, and not the way the law says. Most people will name themselves as a trustee to manage trust assets while they're alive and while they have capacity. You can revoke or change the terms of the trust as long as you are competent. You can also name successor trustees who will take over and manage your trust after you pass away. But just having a living trust is not enough. It has to be fully funded. So if you already have a trust now, how many of you guys have a living trust?
I think I do. Dottie does? I do.
So if you guys have a living trust, you want to make sure that your assets are in the living trust. For instance, if you own a home or other kinds of property, you want to make sure, or other assets, you want to make sure that those assets are retitled so that the trust owns that property or is named as a beneficiary of that property. A lot of people don't really understand that funding part of the living trust. So actually, there's a huge misconception that once you leave your attorney's office, you're basically done, and that's not true. You have to fund your trust, and if you ever have questions, if you ever have questions and you're a client of my firm, we can definitely explain to you what you need to do with particular assets. But a lot of people will leave their attorneys and see in their binder that it says, congratulations, you have an estate plan now go fund your living trust. But a lot of people don't read through their binders when they get them from their attorney because they think that they're done. So make sure to read through whatever paperwork you have to make sure that it works. And also review your estate plan at least every 10 years. At least every 10 years you'll find that major things happen in your life. Maybe you've moved, maybe you have kids, or maybe people have passed away, or maybe even your successor trustees are not so close friends anymore, and you want to make sure that you have different people there. You can change the next thing. The next thing we'll talk about is your incapacity. So even if you don't have a lot of assets, you want to make sure you have planned for what will happen to the stuff that you do own in case you become incapacitated. So we recommend that everybody at least have an advanced healthcare directive and durable power of attorney for finances. If you have one already, you still need to make sure that it's up to date. If you had one set up before 1996, the laws have changed. So you will need to have a HIPAA waiver signed too if you want people to have access to your medical records. If you have your advanced healthcare directive set up after that, even if the laws do change, you'll need to still review everything every few years because attorneys actually do not have a responsibility to let you know that the laws have changed, so it's up to you to make sure everything's up to date. And next slide, please. These are kids. I don't know them, but they're really cute. A lot of my presentations are about, yeah, a lot of my other pictures too, I don't know. But a lot of my planning circles around people who have young kids. So people who have young kids definitely have special needs with regards to estate planning, because most people think of estate planning as something you do when you're about to retire, but people who have kids that they're taking care of need to also worry about what happens to those kids. And I usually recommend that they set up a living trust if they have assets, or at least make sure that, for instance, if you have life insurance, that you've nominated somebody who's responsible to have those funds and who will promise to set up some sort of custodial account for the kid if you're not willing to go through that process of having a living trust set up. Because living trusts are expensive, I'm not going to lie, they're several $1,000s. You can do it yourself. You can also hire a paralegal to set it up, but a lot of times people think that they can't afford living trusts, so they don't go through that and they don't actually end up doing any planning at all. What I usually recommend is people come and talk to me, and it's a free consultation, but at least you'll get your questions answered and you'll get some guidance on what you need to do in terms of planning out your next steps. Because you don't want all this planning to end up happening while you're gone and leaving your successors kind of wondering where all your assets were, what banks you had your accounts at. You want to make sure everything is at least a little bit organized. So some of the things that people have told me about is that they have gotten things in the mail for postcards saying living trust that cost $399. So that should put you immediately on alert. Why $399? I actually did a little bit of research and found that $400, any kind of theft of over $400 was considered a felony. So that might have been the reason why that magic number was on all those postcards. Today it's about $1,000, but any low number should put you on alert. Is this a trust mill? Will they be giving me legal advice, or are they just basically going to do what I tell them to do? In that case, you might just want to set it up yourself. If you're going to be paying like just a few $100s for a living trust, it's probably going to be very close to something you can do yourself through like NOLO or LegalZoom. In any case, even if you do those types of estate plans, you want to make sure that you talk to an attorney if you have any kinds of questions. For instance, people with blended families probably can't do things themselves with DIY estate planning, because you want to make sure that certain situations don't put the kids from a previous marriage at a disadvantage. So whenever you have any kind of situation, you want to make sure that you have an estate plan that's custom tailored to you. But back to the kids thing, my estate plans generally include a long-term guardian and a short-term guardian is nominated, and that's because a lot of people will nominate a guardian who's out of town, or maybe just really far away, like in the East Coast or in another country. So if you have a guardian who's just far away, you want to make sure that you have a short-term guardian who's maybe 30 minutes away, or who lives even closer, who knows your kids, so that in case something does happen to your kids, there's someone immediately available, and your kids don't have to go through Child Protective Services or have to go through any kind of foster care situation while they look for a guardian. So, I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions regarding estate planning?
I do, but it might involve going and seeing you. I had a trust fund maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it was in the area, and the man retired, and it's still sitting there. Well, I know it needs to be updated, and the reason it wasn't updated because I hadn't been able to decide what I wanted to do with my assets. So is that something where it would be beneficial for, me to read a book, get a paralegal, come in and have this resolved if I wound up having a question review? It's just to update stuff, because what they told me originally was all I had to do was make up a sheet with the changes to do it, to proceed the page. Is that true?
Yeah, we can take a look through your estate plan and what it currently says, but that could be true. There is a situation where you could write out the changes that you wanted to make, for instance, a schedule of all the trust assets that you wanted to add. Is that what you were talking about?
Well, I wanted to take away everything that I thought needed any part of my estate, and now I realize that they're older, they're earning their own money, and their parents will be able to help them out in that case.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you would probably need an amendment. I wouldn't recommend doing that yourself. You could definitely talk to me or another attorney about amending your trust.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so within the living trust, there's revocable and irrevocable trusts, right?
Correct.
And can you explain that?
Sure. With revocable trusts, that's basically what most people get to avoid probate, and you want it to be revocable so that you can put things into the trust, you can take things out, there's more flexibility. You can also access those funds in case you need them. And you can also make changes to your trust. For instance, you can decide who the beneficiaries are, and you can change who your successor trustees will be. If you set up an irrevocable trust, a lot of those terms are going to be fixed, and the reason why people set up irrevocable trusts is to get assets out of their trust, or out of their estate. The reason why you want to get assets out of your estate may be for creditor issues or for estate tax issues. That was one thing I didn't really touch on in this presentation, because the estate tax exemption for 2015 is $5.43 million. So that means every dollar over that amount gets taxed 40 cents. It's taxed at 40%. Most people don't need to worry about that. And if you're married, you can use your spouse's exemption as well through certain estate plans. But you want to make sure, most people don't have to worry about estate taxes, and or federal estate taxes, and there's no state estate taxes. It's not something we need to worry about unless the laws change and people actually vote that in. But
irrevocable trusts have less flexibility, and revocable trusts have more flexibility. And most people need that flexibility to be able to access funds in case they need it for emergencies.
It's called trust.
Anyone else have any questions?
Well, so like her situation, let's say you, I don't know, you do my trust and you retire in 2 years because you hit the lottery and you're like, I'm out of here. What happens? Like, are you required to notify me that you're closing your practice? Do you try to help me find someone new?
I usually, if that were me, I would inform all of my clients stating that I'm no longer in practice and that these are some attorneys who you can contact in the area who'd be happy to assist you and also would be willing to honor any kind of agreements that we entered into. For instance, some of my clients have unlimited or have the ability to get changes, like minor changes to their estate plan for free. And so, and the free estate plan review every 3 years too is something that is unique to my practice and maybe not everybody does. But basically you would be able to contact other attorneys. But it all depends, because most attorneys will not keep your documents. Some attorneys do. I do not. I return all the documents to you, so you keep the originals, and I just keep a digital copy. Did you have?
Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment because you're about the third person now over the last 15 years that I've listened to this talk. But remember, I hadn't decided what I wanted to do. And what I didn't want to do was to put out $2,000 or $3,000 and have all the documents done again. But I found out from somebody that said all you need, the magical word was amendment. And fine, I wouldn't mind, putting out $300 or even $500, but that's different than $3,000. So that was why, and I didn't want to have to go through finding another attorney. But no other attorney basically said that. So I might be talking to you and they say, oh yeah, I heard about an amendment. And then that was the motivator, which you have done for me now, because now that was like on my bucket list to get resolved.
Well, a lot of attorneys don't want to guarantee another attorney's work, and that's why they probably wouldn't mention the amendment. But so long as you understand that if I were going to draft your amendment, as long as you understand I'm not going to be on the hook for reviewing your previous trust, we're going to make sure that these changes are effective in your new trust.
But if you had a reliable power of attorney person, or executor of your estate, and that person knew what they were doing, then I wouldn't have to worry about that, correct? Yeah, see? And I still have the same person that would be responsible for carrying out my wishes.
That's awesome.
So if everything's basically the same and you just wanted to change a few things and you were fine with the way that the trust was originally structured,
Right.
then you probably just need that like one-page amendment.
Yeah, like instead of having all my nieces and nephews and grandkids and stuff like that, I just decided I'm going to give it to this church, the pet care place, and something else. That's what I want to do.
But you definitely don't want to do it yourself because you want to make sure that the amendment is valid. Your old trust will probably state exactly what terms need to be in effect for that amendment to take
Yeah,
place.
that's what it is. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Quickly, is any situation too complicated? Like, let's say my husband works at Google and he's got stock and he's got a family trust fund and maybe we have a relative in another state that has a special needs trust. Can you handle all? That's all within your scope?
Yes.
Can you do it?
Excellent.
Yes, you can.
If it's something that I'm not familiar with doing every day, I can definitely have somebody come in. I am a solo attorney. I'm incorporated, but I do have other attorneys who can assist, and they would work with me as of counsel, which is what it's called when they come by and help you as a little partner temporarily.
So if we just want to do a consultation, we just set up an appointment.
Yeah.
to do a consultation.
Yeah, you can grab one of my cards and send me an email and just let me know that you watched the presentation, and I'd be happy to do a free consultation for you. So I reserve up to 2 hours for each one of those.
Okay, and then, do you, it's gonna sound bad, my corporation, I have who I work for, they have a legal assistance, policy. Do you work with any of those legal assistants, to reduce your fees or?
No, I don't, unfortunately. A lot of those, is it like, I forget the name, it starts with an A.
EAP?
Yeah, no, it's not EAP.
I think it's like Oxro or something.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not affiliated with those. But you have to make sure if you do use one of those that the attorney that they send you to isn't somebody who just kind of does
estate plans and wills on the side, then they actually have a lot of expertise in doing it.
And I would feel fine with doing it myself, just for that consultation.
And I can help you, I can guide you to some good do-it-yourself resources too.
Great, should we take a 10-minute break?
Hey,
Great, thank you. Come back at 10 after.
Okay.
try it all.